Single mom revealed her secret talent to save a billionaire CEO from kidnappers, inspiring transformation in Maplewood. Lisa stood behind the counter of Lou's diner, her hands busy wiping down sticky countertops and arranging a line of coffee mugs just right. She felt the familiar weight of exhaustion settle on her shoulders, as it always did by mid-morning. The smell of bacon and fried eggs hung heavy in the air, blending with the low hum of morning chatter from the regulars. But today, amid the familiar routine, whispers fluttered like wings around the room. Talk of billionaire Mark Donovan, a name that represented everything Lisa had long thought about. Fame, fortune, an easy life. Or at least that's what everyone believed as they winked about his rumored kidnapping threat. A snake of doubt coiled in her stomach. As she poured coffee, Samantha's words echoed in her mind. "We can be anything, Mom. You could be a writer. Why not?" The thought sent a jolt through her, flipping her heart like a pancake on the griddle. Could she? A writer? But here she was, serving tables, a life burdened with bills and responsibilities that danced just out of reach. Ambition had become just another forgotten dream under the harsh fluorescent lights of the diner. The clock ticked steadily, each second a reminder of all she hadn't done. "Another coffee, Lisa?" Mrs. Johnson murmured, breaking her train of thought. Lisa smiled, forcing warmth into her voice. "Coming right up." But inside, she battled a tempest of feelings. Who would she be if not a waitress? If she chased those dreams, would Samantha be lost in the shadows? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The door swung open, letting in a gust of wind, and with it came chaos. A group of masked intruders stormed in, shouting, their voices raw with adrenaline and malice. Time slowed, and a jolt shot through Lisa. Every instinct screamed to protect Samantha. Her daughter's wide eyes locked onto hers, searching for answers. A mother's protective heat surged within her. "Get out!" one of the masked men barked, brandishing a weapon. Lisa's heart raced, mind racing. Could she turn fear into action? The faces of the diner's patrons, panicked and disoriented, merged into a blur. Yet there was Mark, at the back in a corner booth, assessing the scene, a flicker of hope igniting in his gaze. "Lisa!" he shouted, desperate and determined. "Help!" Lisa felt the world tilt as her roles collided. Mom and waitress, protector and accomplice. How ridiculous, she thought bitterly, destined to be saving a millionaire while her daughter remained behind the curtain. The chaotic noise threatened to swallow her whole, yet within it, she found clarity. She couldn't abandon Samantha, their dreams, or this chance to make a difference. Panic surged through her veins. Could she navigate this storm? Work with Mark Donovan, a stranger with wealth and power. Yet in this moment, it was her drive that would steer the ship. The stakes had never felt higher, and she had never been so afraid. She felt Samantha pulling away, watching, and it cracked her resolve. This was the moment. Was she destined to be more, or would her sacrifice only spiral into more buried dreams? The tension hung thick, a tightrope straining beneath her weight, each decision an unraveling thread. The line between saving Mark and losing Samantha began to blur. Every choice loomed larger than life, leaving a question suspended in the air. When the dust settled, who would she be and what would she sacrifice? The diner's atmosphere morphed into chaos, moments stretching painfully as Lisa wrestled with the escalating threat. The emotions of fear and duty collided in a storm inside her, forcing her to confront herself amid the turmoil. She grasped the coffee pot tightly, her grip a steadiness against the wild scenario unfolding. The weapon pointed at Mark, the frantic movements of the intruders, they all served as catalysts, awakening something dormant within her. "Move!" the lead intruder shouted again, his voice snapping her from her thoughts. Lisa's instinct kicked in, and with a swift check of her surroundings, she reassured herself of Samantha's position. Just behind the counter and hidden from view, The tightness in her chest loosened, ever so slightly, but the wall of anxiety pressed back. What could she do? Could she outmaneuver them? "Lisa!" Mark's voice sliced through her inner monologue, determined, authoritative. That command ignited something inside her, a flicker of courage that had lain buried beneath the humdrum of daily routine. This moment was not just about survival. It was about reclaiming her identity, one that had been siphoned away by obligation. In one decisive moment, Lisa shifted her focus from her daughter to her own potential. If she was going to act, it couldn't come from fear, but from strength. A whirlwind of ideas swirled in her mind. Could she draw their attention away from Mark? The diner was a narrow space with multiple blind spots. She noticed a pile of menus stacked precariously at the end of the counter. "Look over there!" she shouted suddenly, flinging a menu across the room. The sound caught the intruder's attention, head snapping in her direction. Lisa seized the opportunity. Her heartbeat quickened, sending a rush of adrenaline through her as she hinted to Mark with a tilt of her head, urging him to move toward the door. While the masked men were distracted, Lisa ducked down. Her mind raced back to her daughter's dream of becoming a writer. Perhaps she could pen a different ending to their story. Instinctively, she recalled the voice of her childhood, headstrong and fearless, encouraging her to take risks when it mattered most. "Get down!" Lisa yelled to the other patrons, her voice now authoritative as she guided them into her vision of a makeshift retreat. Her heart raced with every command, every calculated risk. The deeper she dove into this role, the clearer her own sense of worth became. In that frantic moment, she realized the woman she had always dreamed of being was not lost, but needed to be uncovered among the rubble of routine life. Mark saw her transformation, and the shift lit an ember of hope in him. They exchanged a glance that spoke volumes. It was an unvoiced agreement to fight back. No longer was she just a waitress serving coffee. She was a decisive player in a greater narrative. As they maneuvered through the diner, dodging the chaos, Lisa felt grounded in her newfound purpose. But just as she took a step toward the door, another intruder spotted them and lunged forward. The panic surged again, threatening to drown out her clarity. "Stay behind me!" Mark shouted, positioning himself to shield her and Samantha, who had dashed into view, eyes wide in fear, yet transfixed by her mother's courage. In that instant, Lisa stood at the precipice of the unknown, adrenaline coursing through her as she navigated her rising confidence and the looming threat. It was no longer just about surviving today. It was about defining who she was meant to be. The stakes rose higher still, adding another layer to her burgeoning drive. Would she act decisively, risking everything for herself and those she loved? With the noise of confrontation escalating around them, the only question that remained was whether she could summon the strength to embrace the role of protector while still seizing hold of her ambition. Her breath hitched as she realized the time had come to face not just the intruders, but the parts of herself she had long pushed aside. Would she step forward into the unknown, or would she retreat back into the shadows? The moment was electric, a tense breath held between desire and dread. Lisa felt time elongate as the second intruder charged towards them, but she wouldn't let fear strip her of agency now. She could no longer shove her aspirations aside. Back into the shadows? No, she would step forward, ready to meet whatever came her way. Instantly, her mind began to pulse with potential strategies. She had spent years nursing dreams of becoming a chef, not just a waitress. And amidst all this chaos, fragments of this ambition flared alive. What if she concocted a distraction, just like a bold new dish, something that turned unexpected ingredients into something beautiful and useful? Gathering her breath, she raised her voice. "You want the money?" she shouted at the intruder. "You think you can get all of it just standing there?" The masked man hesitated, momentarily stymied, unsure of how to respond. "Lisa, what are you doing?" Mark's voice broke through the haze, a mix of incredulity and concern, but she pressed on, head swimming with possibilities. "Let's make a deal. Let the mother and child go, and I'll tell you where the cash is." Lisa's heart thudded painfully. Every word felt like a gauntlet thrown on the floor, full of risk but necessary. This was her opportunity, a chance to enact change, to embody the person she craved to be. The lead intruder narrowed his eyes, contemplating her proposition. "You think we're just going to trust a waitress? Trust me, I know all the hidden spots. I can get you in and out faster than you can count it." As the words spilled forth, each syllable imprinted her burgeoning confidence, her spirit igniting, edging away from the remnants of the woman who had been too complacent for too long. But while they deliberated, anxiety tightened like a vice around her chest. Lisa needed to seize control. Now was the moment, not just to survive, but to assert her worth, to claim her own narrative. She scanned the diner for anything she could use, an ice pick, a heavy glass, a weapon to swing, if only the need arose. They had just as much to lose as she did. Why shouldn't they fear her fury too? The air thickened with tension, the intruders exchanging glances as if weighing her offer against their desperation. Each beat of the background chaos slipped away, and she found herself clenching the coffee pot tightly, ready to strike if need be. Yet it was in that gripping silence, a palpable fracture of expectation, that she could almost hear Samantha's voice echoing in her mind, a soft urging to be brave, to be bold, and that every story had a chance for redemption. "Let us leave now, or I'll make sure you regret it," Lisa bluffed, her steel resolve unraveling into a thin wisp of caution. The lead intruder's stance leaned slightly away from aggression, revealing the underlying uncertainty. "Let's go," he finally muttered, reluctantly backing down, but not before whispering a threat. "You're making a mistake." Lisa's heart thundered. They were still there, but the facade of control she created was her best weapon yet. As the intruders retreated toward the door, she kept her gaze fixed on them, unwilling to show any weakness until their car was out of sight. As the diner fell eerily quiet, her heart fluttered in newfound liberation. Adrenaline coursed through her veins, and she felt a thrill she hadn't experienced in years. This was more than a fight for survival. It was a rebirth. But before she could fully savor the moment, Mark turned to her, eyes wide with disbelief. "What just happened?" "Everything," she murmured, realizing she was scrambling to catch her breath, steeped in a newfound identity. Then came the realization she had been avoiding all along. The intruders had plans beyond this diner. That much was clear, and they wouldn't fade into obscurity easily. "Get Samantha," she urged, and a determination coiled around her heart again. The fight was not over yet. "Where are you going?" Mark asked, weighing concern with admiration. "I need to know what else they're after," she replied, reigniting the spark of the woman she had always wanted to be. Emerging from that day, Lisa felt herself not just transformed, but empowered, primed to confront whatever stood in her way. The intruders had made a move. Now she would make hers. And just like that, Lisa was no longer just a waitress. She was a contender stepping into her own narrative of resurgence, fiercely ready to unravel the complexities of her present and the threats yet to come. But as she turned toward the exit, a glance at the patrons lingering in stunned acknowledgement brought a new tension along. The unsure whispers of suspicion started weaving through the air. Had it truly ended, or was this merely the beginning of a far deeper conflict? The moment she stepped outside, Lisa was hit by the sharp, crisp air, which felt almost foreign against her skin. For a fleeting instant, she closed her eyes, allowing the rush of adrenaline to settle within her. Yet, that sense of euphoria quickly gave way to the weighty reality that the danger wasn't over. There would be repercussions for her defiance. Turning sharply towards the alley, she spotted Samantha leaning against a back wall, her breathing heavy, clutching her phone as if it were a lifeline. Concern lined her eyes, and when they met Lisa's, a wave of solidarity surged through her. They had faced that moment together, but now needed to strategize. "What do we know?" Lisa asked, her tone steely, trying to latch onto that newfound resolve. "They could come back," Samantha whispered, her voice trembling. "What if they do?" "Then we're ready for them," Lisa said, surprising herself with the force of her conviction. She was not just reacting anymore. She was actively choosing her path. Gathering Samantha close, they began plotting a course of action. They spoke in lowered tones, recounting the details of the intruders, their demeanor, their apparent desperation. Lisa felt a flicker of inspiration as she considered their every move. Instead of hiding, she realized that she could lead. We can't just wait to see what they want. We need to find out who they are and what they're planning. I may just be a waitress, but I know this neighborhood. Let's gather what we can. As they edged cautiously away from the alley, Lisa's mind churned with burgeoning strategies. Her culinary training, once confined to recipes and kitchen prep, now translated into tactical skills. Just like she crafted plates with beautiful, contrasting flavors, she could now create an elaborate plan to unearth the motives of those who threatened her security. But as fiery determination hardened her resolve, she also felt the burden of responsibility pressing down. This was not just about her anymore. She had allies, others who relied on her. Mark had quickly become someone she didn't want to disappoint, and for Samantha, the stakes felt unbearably high. Lisa spent the next day slipping back into the diner, each clink of the coffee cups and murmurs of patrons igniting a mix of nostalgia and vigilance. She picked up on every conversation, searching for whispers of the intruders. She gathered the courage to approach regulars she'd known for years, diverting talk towards crime and the whispers of criminal activities in town. In those conversations, she began to hear threads of information that tied together like the ingredients of a recipe. A few names here, a few addresses there. Each piece of information fanned the flames of her determination. As the day faded into evening, her thoughts were oscillating between thrilling possibilities and the stark reality of her circumstances. Then, as she returned to the back room to jot down her findings, Lisa discovered Mark sitting silently, poring through a stack of reports. "You shouldn't be here, Lisa. They could come back," he warned, his brow creased with anxiety. "What's worse, waiting for them or taking the fight to their door?" She could feel her voice rising, fueled by that deep-seated urgency. Mark looked at her, a mix of admiration and fear swirling in his gaze. "You're really serious about this?" "I'm done waiting for someone to save me," she stated, every word punctuated with her newfound self. "I'm shifting the narrative. I won't just be part of their story anymore." But as Lisa flipped through the documents Mark had gathered, an unsettling realization pierced through her determination. The lead intruder had a name she had overheard, a dark connection to someone in the neighborhood she'd always avoided, a name whispered in hushed tones and clouded by fear. Their connections were rooted deeper than she had previously considered, intertwining her old self with a darkness she had hoped she'd never confront. The path ahead was intertwining all their fates, and while she'd sparked into a flame of courage, it was clear that the embers could yet be snuffed out if she wasn't careful. With a resolve she had never known, she focused again, crafting strategies not only for survival, but for reclaiming her life. Just then, a new wave of doubt washed over her. What if she was unprepared for what lay ahead? The cold truth wrapped itself around her mind like a noose. The reality of their threat made her question everything she had built thus far. As she prepared to face the unknown, Lisa's heart raced with a mixture of anticipation and dread. The stakes just got higher. Little did she know, the very act of confronting her fears was setting the stage for an unwelcome reunion, a confrontation that would unveil secrets buried too deep for too long. She tightened her grip around her pen, ready to write the next chapter of her life, but her gut screamed. Was she ready for what she might uncover? Lisa's mind raced with possibilities, each thought more chaotic than the last. She pored over the documents Mark had gathered, each name acting like a puzzle piece to a larger picture she was determined to complete. However, the shadow of doubt began to creep back in, reminding her of the weight she now bore. It wasn't just her future at stake. It was Mark's, Samantha's, and potentially many others as well. "What do you need from me?" Mark interrupted her spiraling thoughts, breaking her focus. It was a question rooted in concern, but also in a palpable shift of dynamics. The weight of leadership had found itself on her shoulders, and she could see it reflected in his eyes. She considered his offer for just a moment. What could he do to help? "We need to gather more intel on who those intruders are," she started, her voice gaining strength. "But we can't just charge in without knowing the full story. I need your experience in this. You've dealt with law enforcement before. What can they uncover that we haven't?" He nodded, a flicker of relief crossing his face. Lisa could sense he was torn between worry and admiration, and she felt empowered by his willingness to trust her leadership. It was time for her to stop being reactive. She needed to strategize proactively, to plan as she would for an intricate dish, rather than simply throwing ingredients together. As they fleshed out their approach, Lisa's culinary instincts sharpened into a strategic mindset. Using her understanding of flavors, she began to apply it to the elements of information they needed: who to approach, who to be cautious of, and what connections they could leverage. They crafted a plan not only to uncover more about the intruders, but also to bolster their own defenses. "Let's reach out to old connections," she suggested, recalling a few patrons whose names had popped up over the years, seemingly innocuous, but possessing potential ties to either the criminal underworld or the local authority. "We need intel, and who better to ask than the people who know the neighborhood?" The wheels in her mind turned until an anxious flutter settled in her gut. Strength intertwined with trepidation as they discussed who could bring danger and who could provide safety. With each turn of the conversation, Lisa felt the duality of her circumstances. She was simultaneously a server and a soldier in this gritty war, a role that felt increasingly like it was meant for her. After hours of brainstorming, she felt tired yet invigorated. The adrenaline coursed through her veins, pushing her to keep moving, to act. "Let's meet back here tomorrow night. I'll approach a contact about the missing reports from the police station, someone who can trust us." Lisa volunteered, her voice steady and sure. The decision crystallized her resolve. Consequences be damned. She was done being passive. As Lisa prepared to leave, she stole a glance around the diner, absorbing the familiar sights and sounds once more. The clinking of glasses, aromas filling the air, and laughter echoed as she locked eyes with Samantha across the room. A deep-rooted camaraderie blossomed as they subtly exchanged nods, their bond strengthening with each challenge. With her mind still racing, she stepped out into the cold night air. A chilling breeze swept over her, leaving her cheeks flushed and her heart pounding. She had taken measures to reclaim her life, yet the dangers lingered. The shadowy figure of the lead intruder returned to haunt her thoughts. Who would they send next, and what pretexts would they use to draw her deeper into whatever game they were playing? In the depths of her contemplation, the realization struck with dreadful clarity. This was more than a fight for survival. It was a fight for self-discovery, and she was unearthing layers of herself that she had kept buried in fear. Yet as she wrapped her arms around herself for warmth, she sensed that it would only get darker before dawn. As she walked down the eerily quiet street, a slight rustling made her freeze in place. A figure emerged from the shadows, an uninvited ghost from her past, that had the potential to upend everything she had begun to build. The blood rushed in her ears as she sought to steady her breathing. Was she ready to face this chapter of her life head-on? Unbeknownst to her, this confrontation could unravel everything she thought she knew about herself, placing Lisa at a crossroads where survival and personal evolution would collide. Lisa's heart raced as the shadows coalesced into a recognizable figure. Paul, her estranged father. His presence felt like a specter from her past, one she had tried to escape. Yet here he was, a tangible reminder of the fractures in her identity. The anticipation of confrontation twisted in her stomach, heralding a storm of emotions she thought she had buried long ago. "Lisa," he said, his voice a hesitant mix of nostalgia and caution. "It's been a long time." She stood frozen, her instinct screaming to flee, but a deeper, more resolute part of her held her ground. This was not just about confronting him. It was about asserting who she had become in his absence, a mother, a leader, a woman forged by trials. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice steady but edged with fatigue. Lisa was not the frightened girl who had spent years trying to gain his approval. She had worked hard to build herself into someone who commanded respect and wasn't afraid to demand answers. I need your help, he stammered, stepping closer, yet still maintaining a cautious distance. The vulnerability on his face was palpable. There's something happening that you need to know about. He was no longer the towering figure of authority she once feared. Instead, he appeared weary and diminished, as though life had worn him down just as it had her. She felt a flicker of pity, but it quickly faded. She could not afford to lose any ground now. Too much was at stake. "A little late for that," she replied, her tone colder than she intended. "You disappeared when I needed you most. Why should I trust you now?" "I made mistakes," he replied, a hint of desperation tinging his voice. "But I can help you with the situation you're in. Those intruders you're worried about. They're connected to my dealings. A group I thought I could manage, but it spiraled out of control." The flicker of doubt that she had carefully tentatively pushed aside came rushing back, making her question the implications of his words. She had dedicated herself to taking charge, but the revelation could embroil her in a twisted legacy she was desperate to escape. "What do you know?" she pressed, her mind racing with the repercussions of getting entangled in his mess. "They're dangerous, Lisa, and they're after more than just your restaurant. You need to understand what's at stake." "No," she interrupted, her resolve locking into place. "You had your chance to protect me. Don't come into my life now and pretend to care." Paul's expression turned stony, but his eyes betrayed a mixture of sorrow and desperation. "I'm not asking for forgiveness, I'm trying to warn you. You can't face this alone. Let me help you uncover the truth." The internal struggle within Lisa unfurled violently. Memories of abandonment swirled like an unforgiving tempest. The reality of her father's complexity pulled her into a vortex of responsibility and betrayal. Yet, as she fought against the tide of emotions, a clarity emerged. Hidden power danced at her fingertips. This could be an opportunity to solidify her burgeoning leadership. "Help me?" she echoed incredulously, a faint laugh escaping her lips. "And what do I get in return? A chance to get back in your good graces?" "This is about your safety," he said, his voice a gravelly whisper, desperation leaking through. "You need to be prepared for what's coming, and turning away from me won't keep you safe." Her face hardened. "You want to help? Start by earning my trust. We'll meet tomorrow at the diner, to share intel. But let's make one thing clear. If you betray me again, it won't just be your relationship with me that's on the line." He nodded, an acknowledgement of her terms, but the wariness still lingered in the air. As he slipped back into the shadows from which he had come, she felt a complex thrumming within her, a blend of fear, possibility, and a strange sense of empowerment. Behind the hurt and anger, an unexpected truth threatened to reveal something essential about herself, a hidden talent to withstand the storms of betrayal and conflict. Returning to her car, she felt an adrenaline surge coursing through her veins, not just for the confrontation she'd faced, but for the realization that she was stronger than her past. Back at the diner, she sat at a booth, shadowed by the late-night glow, contemplating the risky balance she now had to maintain. She was on the brink of discovery. One wrong move could push her back into the abyss. As she prepared for the next day's meeting, a thought struck Lisa with chilling certainty. Uncovering the truth about the intruders was only the surface of what she needed to decipher. She would have to navigate a treacherous path, straddling both her father's legacy and her burgeoning agency. With the specter of uncertainty looming ahead, Lisa steeled herself. She was ready to face whatever came next, even if it meant confronting the darkest parts of her own story. The diner was eerily quiet as dawn crept in, casting soft light through the blinds. Lisa sipped her coffee, its warmth a stark contrast to the cold dread pooling in her stomach. She couldn't shake the feeling of impending confrontation. The weight of her father's potential betrayal loomed over her like a heavy fog. The innocence of her morning routine felt incongruous against the tumult raging within her. As she scanned the nearly empty diner, her gaze focused on the cracked linoleum floor. It reminded her of her childhood, filled with a toxic mix of longing and resentment. How many mornings had she spent here, waiting for a father who never came? The past echoed in the silence, stirring feelings she thought she had buried deep. Yet this time it was different. She was not that girl anymore. She put down her cup and drew a deep breath, procuring a small notepad from her purse. With steady hands, she penned her thoughts, the familiar act both grounding and empowering. Defining her objectives had become crucial in her ascent. Today, she wouldn't just meet with Paul, she would dissect every word and intention behind it, armed with newfound resilience. "Stay vigilant," she wrote, her resolve strengthening with every stroke of the pen. Trust must be earned, not given. It felt like a pledge, a contract with herself to remain steadfast amidst the storm. The bell above the door chimed, and her heart spiked. Paul stepped inside, looking more anxious than he had the night before. His disheveled hair and shadowed eyes told a story of sleepless nights haunted by responsibility. But Lisa was not here to stroke his ego or offer absolution. She was here to secure her future and that of her restaurant, the one place that embodied her dreams. "Thanks for meeting me," he said, sliding into the booth opposite her. There was a catch in his voice that stirred something deep within her, but she quickly banished the impulse to feel sorry for him. Empathy could cloud her judgment. "Let's get to it, shall we?" she replied, her tone clipped but assertive. Paul glanced around the diner as though he were afraid of being overheard. "I've been gathering intel. The group I mentioned, they're bigger than I thought. It's not just about your restaurant. They're interested in much more." Lisa leaned forward, her interest piquing despite her reservations. "What do you mean?" "They're connected to the underground," he began, his voice dropping lower. "I have contacts who can give us information, but it comes at a price." "Loyalty?" Her eyes locked onto his, searching for any sign of deceit. "Is that what you're banking on?" "No," he said, his expression strikingly serious. "They want something I have, and I'm afraid if we don't act fast, they'll come looking for both of us." As he spoke, Lisa felt a surge of clarity wash over her. This was not just about her father and his past mistakes. It was about her reclaiming power over her life. His failures bound them together, but she would not become a pawn in his game. Instead, she would emerge as an ally, one strategically positioned to turn this situation in her favor. "What do you propose?" she asked, her voice steady, betraying none of the internal turbulence swirling inside her. "I want you to harness your connections," he said earnestly. "The restaurant is a hub. You can gather information, listen for whispers that might reveal their next move." Did he truly believe she could take this risk? The realization that he thought of her as a potential ally sparked a new determination. "You're placing a lot of faith in my ability to navigate this underbelly of intrigue." He nodded, a flicker of desperation mingling with something resembling admiration. "Call it a hunch. You've come this far. You're already a leader in your own right." A challenge rested in his words, and with it, the seeds of belief in herself that she never knew she possessed began to flourish. "Fine," she said, her tone firm. "But you have to be transparent with me. No more secrets." The gravity of her decision settled over her like a mantle. There was no turning back now. She was stepping into a world that had been fraught with danger from the very beginning. But this time, she did it on her terms. This was an opportunity, a chance to mold her legacy into something transformative, not just for herself, but for her child. As they began to outline a strategy, the diner light dimmed around them, reflecting the shadows of the challenges yet to come. Lisa's pulse quickened. A new chapter unfolded before her, one where she would not just confront her fears, but overpower them. The realm of danger was now intertwined with her ambitions. The line had been drawn, but it felt like it had been drawn in the sand, wavy yet permanent. At that moment, a chilling thought crept into her mind. What if the real enemy was closer than she thought? The palpable tension in the air hinted at deeper pits of betrayal waiting to be uncovered. Tomorrow, she would step into the uncertainty. But today, she would prepare to fight for her narrative, a fight she wouldn't face alone. The lock on her past was slowly beginning to crack. The familiar pulse of fear transformed into an electrifying buzz of determination, igniting a fire she had long buried. Little did she know, as she met each challenge head-on, new revelations awaited, ones that would force her to confront the very essence of who she was becoming. Something darker loomed, a reckoning that would test her resolve and the legacy she wished to craft. The first rays of light filtered through her apartment window, waking Lisa from a restless sleep. Each thought bore the weight of her plans, a heavy burden shaped by the meeting with Paul. As she blindsided her past, she also had to face how much had changed within her. She wasn't simply a restaurant owner anymore. She was stepping into the fray, ready to cultivate alliances and fend off threats that loomed with every breath. She prepared breakfast for her son, Jamie, moving through the motions like a finely tuned machine. Sizzling eggs and a pot of oatmeal filled the air with warmth, a normalcy that felt worlds apart from the tension brewing in her mind. Every bite he took reminded her of the stakes involved. This wasn't just food, it was the fuel for a fight she needed to win, one that defined their future. Jamie chatted about school, filled with the innocence of childhood, oblivious to the chaos that encroached on their lives. As she listened, Lisa found herself smiling, yet her stomach churned. She thought of how much she had to lose if things went wrong. The weight of his trust, his reliance on her, demanded she dig deeper into herself than she'd ever thought necessary. After breakfast, she tackled her morning routine, demanding she look as strong as she felt inside. A crisp blouse, her favorite leather jacket, and minimal but effective makeup. She glanced in the mirror, and for the first time, the reflection staring back was one she recognized. Not just as Jamie's mother or the restaurant owner, but as Lisa, the woman who could fight for her destiny. The drive to the diner was plagued with doubt, twisting her stomach into knots as she replayed Paul's words. She needed more intel, more clarity, and she couldn't rely solely on the shadows of his connections. Narrowing her focus, she envisioned the restaurant as her battleground, a hub where news might flicker like candlelight through the cracks of uncertainty. Would the loyal patrons who came in day after day share their whispers with her, unaware of the tumult beneath mundane conversations? Arriving at the diner, she was struck by silence, the calm before a storm that felt imminent. As she walked through the familiar space, her footsteps echoed with the weight of possibility. She began setting up the tables, her hands moving instinctively while her mind raced. She had a plan, one that demanded courage. Lisa decided it was time to engage her regulars like never before. She would turn casual conversations into reconnaissance, blending her instincts for hospitality with the tactics of espionage. This world was uncharted, but she recognized the signs of human behavior. People loved to share their stories, especially when they felt a genuine connection. She intuitively felt she could unlock information if she approached it the right way. With that thought, she initiated conversations, her charm on display. "How's everything going? Have you heard anything interesting lately?" she'd bridge into. Unsuspecting seeds of inquiry would give her avenues to explore. They couldn't know she was listening for something deeper, threads that could weave through conversations like a tapestry, revealing hidden motives and alliances. As she served, she caught snippets of conversations, sometimes glancing at the door as if expecting a phantom figure to walk in, one of Paul's informants or an unwelcome shadow. Whispers of a construction project, concerns about neighborhood safety, and murmurings of a recent robbery bubbled around her. But there was a pulse throbbing stronger than the chatter, the realization that this was not just gathering information. It was her proving ground, where she could reclaim her narrative in every sense. Every nod, every laugh, every observation refined her intuition and empowered her burgeoning instincts. Just then, a familiar face entered. It was Max, a former chef now navigating the local scene, someone she'd thought she could trust. His presence struck her like a thunderclap. What if he had ties to the darker dealings Paul mentioned? "Lisa," he greeted, but his enthusiasm felt discordant. "Been ages since I've had your coffee." "Sure has, Max. What brings you here today?" She maintained her composure, but a flurry of thoughts raced within her, questioning his motives. As they chatted, she couldn't shake the tightening in her chest. Her instincts screamed to tread carefully, but the pressure of her circumstances overshadowed any lingering doubts about trust. Just as she was about to respond, Lisa caught a glimpse of something ominous in his eyes. She could feel the ground shift beneath her, a hunger that hung between them like unspoken words. In that moment, she couldn't help but wonder. Was he ally or adversary? And where did his true loyalties lie? The air crackled with uncertainty, a tension paired with the thrill of discovery. Whatever his intentions, the answer to her question lay in the interactions she perfected over years. Are you ready for a deeper dive into this world? Her internal voice urged as she approached the edge of the unknown, tension winding around every thought. The stakes were rising. The closer she drew to the truth, the more aware she became of the intricate web surrounding her. Tomorrow would offer her first real test, a potential unveiling of secrets that danced at her fingertips, urging her to spark them into action. But right now, she had to decide. Could she pull the thread and risk everything? One thing was clear: discovery and danger intertwined, and the next step would either elevate her or plunge her deeper into the shadows. The moment of choice was approaching, and Lisa could almost taste the thrill of the unknown waiting beyond the diner's door. The shift in the air felt tangible, almost electric, as Lisa stood at the precipice of uncertainty. She watched Max carefully, gauging each of his movements, which seemed far too deliberate and measured for the casual environment of the diner. Her gut tightened, instinct urging her to remain composed while her mind raced ahead, plotting an escape route should she need one. "Can I get you the usual?" she asked, trying to diffuse the palpable tension and steer the conversation into less murky waters. "Sure," he replied, the corners of his mouth lifting into a practiced smile. But she noticed the flicker in his gaze, an unsettling focus that hinted this wasn't a friendly visit. Could he sense her wariness? As she shuffled away to prepare his coffee, Lisa's mind spiraled into a torrent of questions. Trust had always been her anchor, yet now it felt like a heavy stone dragging her into murky depths. This was not merely a conversation, it was an encounter steeped in the uncertainty she felt all around her. Returning with his coffee, she placed it gingerly on the table, careful to observe his reaction. Max took a deep sip, his eyes narrowing in contemplation. "You know, I've been thinking about what we talked about before. Collaborating. There's a lot of potential out there, and with the right recipe, we could turn things around." Collaborating? The word hung in the air like an uninvited guest. Had he come to woo her back into a partnership, or was he trying to bait her into a snare? "Yeah, I mean, your diner has heart, but the community is changing. There are people moving in, bringing different tastes." He welcomed her with a smile that came off too sharp. "You get what I'm saying. We could make some serious waves." She steeled herself, curiosity and caution battling for dominance. "What exactly do you have in mind?" The question was laced with skepticism, but simmering with strategic interest. "I know a few guys in property management looking to revamp the area. Imagine a gourmet twist on classic dishes, revive the diner's brand, attract new customers. It could be lucrative." His voice flowed smoothly, but Lisa could hear the undercurrent. Was he attempting to play on her desperation, her fear? "Max, nothing around here needs revamping except maybe your approach," she countered, holding his gaze steady. "People come to this diner for the warmth, not a grand project." His eyes flickered momentarily, a hint of irritation there perhaps. "You're selling yourself short, Lisa. The right team could take your diner to unimaginable heights." At that moment, she sensed a shift within herself. The girl who had hoped for camaraderie, even in their past partnership, began to peel away the layers of uncertainty and began recognizing her own power. "I appreciate your concern, but I'm just trying to survive, Max. I do not need a partner. I need support. And right now, I'm not sure what side you're on." The raw honesty surprised her. Did she genuinely mean it? Had she just broken through a critical chink in her own armor? Though doubt still clung to her, she felt a sliver of clarity, revealing new threads of strength woven into her essence. Max's expression faltered for just a moment, revealing something real behind the facade. Was it hunger or desperation? "Lisa, he began, but she interrupted, sensing the shift in her own boundaries. "I think it's best you leave," she declared, voice steady. This was navigating uncharted territory, and she had moved from the defensive to the assertive, but with that choice came the fear of what might unfold. Would he lash out? Would this moment ignite a series of shadowy retaliations? As he stood, the tension crackled between them, bringing with it an unexpected lightness. It dawned on her that she had taken a stand, faced her doubts head-on, and emerged, bruised but not broken. She was gaining ground in this battle to reclaim her agency. "Fine," he folded, his annoyance palpable. "Just remember, the world is changing, and you'll need to keep up." With that, he turned and left the diner, the door swinging behind him with a finality that ricocheted in Lisa's chest. Alone again, she took a deep breath, reclaiming her space. This was just one interaction in a series of unfolding mysteries. More encounters would arise. She needed to brace herself for the next. Tomorrow promised a fresh influx of information that could propel her deeper into the undercurrents of her surroundings, and with each interaction, intuitive, bold, and vulnerable, she would carve out her domain. Just as the thought settled, the door swung open once more, and a new figure walked in, someone she recognized from the neighborhood, Anne, a local businesswoman she'd previously viewed as an ally. But today, Anne's demeanor held something else entirely. Was it fear in her eyes, or perhaps urgency? "Lisa," she began, her voice shaking slightly, "I have something you need to hear." Lisa's heart raced. The stakes were climbing higher than she could have anticipated. In that moment, the sense of control slipped, replaced by a determined curiosity about the storm brewing beneath her world. What crucial piece of the puzzle was about to be unveiled? Lisa sat across from Anne, the gravity of the woman's expression underscoring the urgency of their meeting. The familiar hustle of the diner faded into the background as Lisa leaned forward, her mind racing with possibilities. "What's going on?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady amidst the storm of thoughts swirling in her head. Anne took a deep breath, visibly collecting her thoughts. "It's about the intruders," she said, her voice low. "There's a lot more happening than you realize. They're not just after your diner. They have their sights set on displacing local businesses. There's a development plan in play, and they're trying to intimidate anyone who could stand in their way." In that moment, the pieces of Lisa's rapidly evolving life began to click into place. The discontent in the community, Max's hints at real estate reshaping the neighborhood, it was all connected. The warmth that had coursed through her veins moments ago vanished, replaced by a cold wave of determination. "Who's behind this? Do you have any names?" she pressed, steeling herself against the potential fallout from this information. "Yes," Anne replied, glancing cautiously around as if the walls might have ears. "A group called Sterling Development. They've been making threats to local owners, hoping to scare them into selling. I couldn't keep quiet any longer. It's not just your diner at risk." The realization struck Lisa like a lightning bolt. Sterling Development had been a name whispered in dark corners. Rumors of their ruthless tactics circulated among those who had survived previous offensives. "So they intend to raise the diner and replace it with another chain?" Anne nodded, her eyes filled with concern. "Exactly, but it gets worse. I heard them mention a list of names. Yours was amongst them." Panic surged within Lisa. The thought of someone plotting against her without her even knowing felt like a betrayal of the lifeblood she'd poured into her diner. Yet, amid the fear, a flicker of resilience sparked, an awakening of the woman she was becoming. In this moment, something ignited deep down. "We have to act. We can't let them intimidate us any longer," she declared, her voice solid and firm. Anne's gaze met hers, a mixture of fear and admiration flashing between them. "But how? They'll stop at nothing, Lisa." Lisa leaned back, taking stock of her resources. "This is our fight. If they want to claim authority through fear, we need to rally the community. They can't displace us if we stand united." Thoughts whirled as her instincts shifted from survival to strategy. She was no longer just a waitress. She was a leader, unearthing a collective strength in herself and her patrons. "I can help spread the word," Anne suggested, her resolve hardening as the fear in her eyes began to fade. "We need to host a meeting, gather everyone who might be affected. Knowledge is power, right?" "Absolutely," Lisa said, feeling a rush of fervor course through her. "Let's get the community together. We'll show them that we're not going to back down. We will use fear as our fuel to fight back." As they mapped out the time and place for their community meeting, Lisa felt the stirrings of her old self, fueled not just by fear of losing her establishment, but with an understanding that nurturing her space meant so much more than she had once thought. This wasn't just about reclaiming her restaurant. It was about standing tall in her identity, about fighting the shadows that had loomed for far too long. When Anne left, Lisa felt a surge of energy push her forward. This was the moment she had been waiting for, not just for herself, but for all the people who sat in her diner, laughing and sharing life over coffee. She would no longer be afraid to confront the powers that sought to tear her dream away. With new focus, she dashed to the back room and grabbed her phone, sending out messages to regulars and friends alike, inviting them to the meeting. It was time for them to unite, not just for her, but for everyone who valued the spirit of their community. As the sun dipped low, painting the diner in the warm hues of evening, Lisa felt invigorated. She had taken back her narrative, and with every call made, she felt her resolve strengthen. Tomorrow night would be a new beginning, a culmination of resilience and hope. The stakes were higher than they had ever been, and with each passing moment, the shadows felt less intimidating. In this newfound strength, Lisa realized she was more than a survivor. She was a beacon for others, and together, they would rise against any tide that threatened their existence. With clarity shining through, she concluded the day emboldened, ready to embrace whatever challenges came her way, knowing she had transformed from a woman under siege to one wielding the power of her own destiny. Now, dear friends, it's time for you to take a stand. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. Together, we can spark change.